Today, I'm going to share 7 easy post-processing techniques here in Lightroom that beginners often miss, I think, but that can actually really improve your raw photos pretty much instantly. Hello there, I'm Henry, and I've been a professional landscape photographer now for almost 5 years, actually, and throughout my journey, I've become fairly proficient in post-processing, I'd say. I'm quite confident. And I've learned some simple yet powerful techniques along the way that can make a world of difference to your final images. And I will say this, that even now, I like to keep my editing workflow as simple as possible. So there's nothing too complicated here, I promise. I know firsthand how daunting actually it can be to navigate Lightroom and things like that, but I'm here to simplify it for you. So we're going to start out with one of my most used tools by looking at how to enhance light with radial gradients. So these are the first couple of images that I want to work on here. Well, in fact, this is just one photograph. We've got the raw file here on the left-hand side, and we've got the completed image over here on the right-hand side. This is a photograph that I took probably about 3 or 4 years ago now in the wonderful Lake District National Park, which is really close to me. If you watch any of my other videos, it's where you'll find me most of the time. And it was a stunning morning. I love this photograph. And you know what? Before we get into the tip, I think this is a great one to start with because it kind of reinforces what I was saying a second ago about how I like to keep my post-processing really simple and subtle. You know, I don't edit my photographs to death most of the time. So let's get this raw file opened up in the develop module. So yeah, like I said, this first tip is all about enhancing the light, and we're going to do this here with a radial filter. All of these tips you'll find are not only easy and simple, but they're so quick as well. Once you get the hang of it, these will take you like a matter of seconds. So we're going to be through these in no time, I promise you. So first things first, we want to go up to the mask section here, and we want to select a radial gradient. And then I'm going to draw this out up here on the top left hand side. Make sure that you can see it there. And what's really important here is, as you can see, if I move that mask out of the way, there's already a load of organic light in the photograph. All I'm wanting to do here is enhance it, bring up the exposure of that section a little bit, bring up the temperature, maybe the warmth. So we'll pop the mask back up there, and then, yeah, first things first, we're going to increase the exposure slightly. It looks amazing already. I mean, look at that. And again, all we're doing is enhancing something that's already there. And then I'm going to bring up the temperature slightly to make it a little bit warmer. Bring it down in a little bit more so we've got more light spraying across that scene. And there we go. That's the first tip. So simple. Quick before and after of that mask. Look at that. It just adds, it just injects a little bit of warmth and contrast into the photograph. So the next image that we're going to work on here for the second editing technique is a photograph that I took on the wonderful Isle of Mull only a month or two ago in Scotland, and this was actually taken with my drone, and I was really happy with it. It's a nice photograph. I guess you're all seeing this for the first time because I never shared it before. However, and hopefully you feel the same about this, I think it's a little bit sickly, but only specifically, in my opinion at least, with the blues. So only this sort of top section of the photograph. I'm happy with the beach. I'm happy with the grass down here, the colour of it. Even this peninsula to me looks fine. Even the cows look fine. So, you know, I don't want to go in and just reduce the saturation of everything, because I'd want my blues probably about there, but then the grass starts looking flat. Not for me. So I'll undo that. And what I'm going to do here, and this is the second tip, I want to only select a specific colour. So I'm going to go into the colour mixer. I'm going to use this little point selector tool, and I'm going to specifically click on the colour of which I want to change the saturation of in a second. And it, like I said, it's that blue colour there in the middle. Now you can see here, it's selected that here, and I'm going to reduce the saturation. And if I just be really extreme about it, you can see we're only affecting the saturation of the blues there. And yeah, I'll probably bring that down to something like that. Quick before and after, we've got rid of all of them sickly blues, but critically, without affecting any of the grass or the beach or the cows or anything else like that. So next up is actually 2 tips, tip number 3 and tip number 4, and this is without a doubt my favorite post-processing technique of all time. This proper transforms your raw files. I love it. So this image was taken on the incredible island of Tenerife, probably 3 months ago or something like that. And if it's not obvious, raw file on the left-hand side, completed image on the right-hand side. And we are specifically going to work on the sky. So here's the raw file opened up in the develop module again. And here, the sky for me is just way too washed out. There's no contrast. It's so flat. It was nowhere near how it looked on the day. And all we're going to do here is add a mask specifically to the sky and then work on the sky a little bit. But again, this is so simple. I don't want to overcomplicate things. So we're going to go into the masks section here, and you can see there's these three at the top. Bang in the middle is sky. It's a little bit sort of AI based. You can see it says detecting sky there. And yeah, there we go. It's selected the sky. Brilliant. So that means that we can start changing things. But for me, like, it's just a little bit too abrupt in this section here. It looks a little bit too fake. So we're going to intersect this mask with a linear gradient. And if I'm going too quick for you here, remember, you can always pause, rewind, work along on your own photograph and just try and follow these steps the best that you can. And now we're going to add a linear gradient to the sky selected mask that is already there. And it's just going to make the selection a lot more natural and a lot more gradual, you know, because this is a gradient. So now you can see we've got this nice kind of fade almost of the mask going from top down to the bottom, and that is going to be reflected in any of the edits that we make now. So now if we bring the exposure down, look, it's so much more natural. And remember, you can still play with the mask. And quick before and after, I want you to see it as it is there. Look at that, look at that. And again, this is the first thing that we've done to this raw file. It's already making a massive difference. Now, on to tip number 4, maybe the simplest yet. Once you've got your sky selected, get down to the old dehaze tool. Look at this. Oh, get a look at that. It just adds so much drama and mood to that sky. That right there, tip number 4, is probably my favorite sort of post-processing tip of all time. Quick before and after, that has made a huge difference. And again, we've only just begun. Now, not mad on the sort of blue tint that we've got. That's one thing that you've got to be careful with the dehaze. But of course, we've still only got the sky selected, so I can maybe increase the temperature a little bit like that to get rid of the blues. Or if I wanted to, I could maybe decrease the saturation and it just looks a lot more natural. Fantastic, man. I love that tip. Now, for tip number 5, we've only got a few left here already. We're flying through them. Tip number 5, we're going to work on these photographs here. And this was also taken on the Isle of Mull, just like the drone photograph with the cows on the beach, but obviously a completely different type of image. Completed image here on the left-hand side, raw image on the right-hand side, which is the one that we're going to work on. Now, if you don't mind, first thing that I'm going to do to this raw file has nothing to do with the tip. I'm going to just simply crop it into a 1:1, into a square crop, because I want the viewer's attention to be on the central subject, which in this case is the sea thrift, this beautiful little pink flower. Now, I'm just going to make that a tiny, tiny little bit bigger. There we go, something like that. Now, like I said, I want the viewer's eye to go directly to the flower. There's too many distractions here for me. This stuff down here is annoying. This kind of blue area here, I just want that to be black. Even the stem of the flower is a little bit too luminous and bright. It's madness. So what we could do is go down to the effects panel here and just add a simple vignette like that. Annoyingly, that's actually done a really good job. Quick before and after there. That looks pretty good. However, I don't use the vignette very often, the sort of built-in vignette here on Lightroom, because I like to sort of add a vignette myself. It's a fancy vignette, basically. So we're going to go up to the masks panel here again, and just like in the first tip, I'm going to select this radial gradient. You'll remember this is the same mask that we used when we were editing the photograph of that foggy morning. Now, I'm going to really, in a sort of rudimentary way, just draw around the middle of the photograph, which is obviously where our flower is. But now I'm going to invert the selection. So essentially now, everything is selected except from the beautiful sea thrift flower in the middle. So if I now bring down the exposure, we get the same effect that we did from the vignette, but it's a little bit more controlled. You can see it's completely reduced the saturation and the luminance even of the kind of stem of the flower. But what's great about using a mask like this, a radial gradient instead of a vignette, is we've got so much more control. So I can bring the saturation down a little bit more, which is going to get rid of them blues completely. It's going to bring the saturation down of the stem as well, but critically without affecting our flower too much. So quick before and after, that is just madness. And again, I know I keep saying this, but this is the first thing that we've done to this raw file. You know, I could then move on and just increase the whole saturation of the photograph to bring back the pink of the sea thrift. I could increase the contrast, you know what I mean? Like, there is your dinner. That looks class. So I've realised I can't actually find the photographs that I need for this final tip. I think it's on one of my memory cards. Hang on. I found the culprit. It's on here for some reason. I mustn't have put it on my Lightroom catalogue. I hate that, man. You know when you like photographs, I hate that when stuff's not in my Lightroom catalogue and I've got to like re-upload it again. Right, let's find this image because this is a really good one. So we're going to work on this photograph of this tiny little flower that I took a week or two ago in my local woodland, and I love the image. This actually isn't the raw file. This is the completed file because I cannot find the raw file. I think I might have deleted it, but it's still going to get my point across for these last two tips. Now, this is a strange one, to be honest, because generally in landscape photography at least, you wouldn't really want this effect very often at all, but I'm finding that these little almost macro-like images benefit really well from this technique. Now there's a newish feature in Lightroom. If you haven't got like one of the most updated versions of Lightroom, you may need to update to get this, but it's here. It's called Lens Blur. So we'll click on that and we'll click on apply because it's going to be very self-explanatory. There we go. So if I do before and after, it's not the best example because we've already got a lot of blur in the background already, but basically what this is doing here, this tool, is again, it's probably a little bit AI based. It knows that the main subject is the flower and it's blurring everything else behind the flower. So you know yourselves, in portrait photography, in wedding photography, if you're photographing your pets, children, sports, like most other genres of photography, having that blurry background, that bokeh effect is just beautiful. But yeah, generally in landscape photography, we want everything in focus from front to back. But I think in these situations, it works fantastically, especially if you haven't got like a really expensive lens that you can go down to like f1.8, f1.4 or whatever. This almost mimics that, you know, and I'm finding it to be really useful in, yeah, these sorts of situations. Now the final tip here, we can do it with this photograph and do it with any photograph, is probably, well, definitely the simplest in this video. And Lightroom has got a little known feature really, a secret feature. It's not secret, but it's really cool. And it's called lights out mode. And all you do is just press the L on your keyboard and watch what it does. It does that kind of fade where you can see your photograph properly, and then it does that where it grays out everything else, and then you just press L again to go back. So it cycles through them like that. And it's such a simple little thing, but I only found this out recently, and it even adds a tiny little bit of a border to your photograph. And for me, because you can press F as well to go like into like a full screen mode, and you should be able to. There we go. And that is great, but I don't know, I just prefer it when you can have a little bit of a border around it, you know. Simple, but really, really effective. As you're editing your raw file, you can just kind of do that as and when you want and check up on the edit, how it's going. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Please drop some comments down below with any more tips that you might have for some beginners in the world of post-processing. Here is a video of me out on location if you'd like to see me taking photographs, and thank you so very much for taking the time to tune in. I shall see you on the next adventure. Out!